Boro are already looking ahead to what could be a huge summer with lots of potential incomings and outgoings, but one that we never quite expected would be the director of football as well. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Hope you're all enjoying your international break, your break away from Boro. I'm not going to lie, I am enjoying a little break away from football, a bit of a detox away from Middlesbrough Football Club, because of course it is the most stressful thing on planet Earth. But there is still news dropping in, and unexpected news that is a slight concern if it does come true, and that is that Middlesbrough's head of football, Kieran, is potentially a target for a Premier League side to join their recruitment team. That team being Crystal Palace. This is what has been reported in the Gazette by the legend that is Craig Johns. So Crystal Palace are believed to be considering an approach from Middlesbrough's Kieran after the shock departure of their sporting director, Dougie Freedman. Scott has been Boro's head of football since September 2021 and has overseen a transformation as far as the club's recruitment and general direction is concerned. Brought in after a tough period as they emerged from the pandemic, his recruitment work has helped Boro improve the financial position as well as improving their fortunes on the pitch. Scott, who joined Boro from Norwich City, is understood to have attracted interest from numerous Premier League clubs. As far as Palace are concerned, they've operated a similar model to Boro since Freedman's return to Selhurst Park in 2017. He's been credited with notable recruitment successes such as Eberechi Eze, Michael Elise, Mark Gahey, Czech Decore and Adam Wharton. A statement from Palace on Tuesday confirmed that Freedman is leaving the club to take up a role overseas, and though not confirmed as yet, it is believed to be a multi-million-pound one with one of the sides in Saudi Arabia. For the time being, Palace chairman Steve Parish is understood to be working closer with Ian Moody, who has held a consultancy role at the club for a number of years. With background in journalism, though, his strengths are said to be in negotiating deals rather than identifying talent. That's where Kieran comes in, because it says longer term Parish is likely to seek a similar kind of talent identification specialist like Scott, with Sky Sports also naming Lee Dykes, technical director at Brentford, as a potential candidate, although The Athletic has mentioned former Newcastle and Manchester United director Dan Ashworth, as well as departing Everton sporting director Kevin Thelwell as other potential targets. He does refer to some of the success that Scott has had at Boro, saying that it comes at a time to which Palace are also interested in numerous Boro assets. Hayden Hackney, Rav Vandenberg and Ben Doak have been linked with Palace, and that no doubt it strengthens their belief in Scott's talent when you look at Morgan Rogers, his current success at Aston Villa, and Boro's club record sale of Emmanuel Lath last month. Further highlights Scott and the recruitment work that he's done at the club, and also mentions, which I believe to be true and completely agree with, it would be a huge blow for Boro if Scott was to leave. He has transformed Boro's recruitment team, bringing Chris Jones in, and Chris Jones, ironically, was a scout at Palace before he moved to Boro. So, it sounds like, although far from a certainty, Kieran is a target for Crystal Palace, and this would be a giant loss if it was to happen. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not been a great January for Boro, and that certainly has played a huge part into why the squad and the quality of it, the depth of it, seems weaker. That, paired with injuries, of course, has led to Boro's season slipping and sliding down a cliff, to be honest, and it has our playoff aspirations, to which they should be far more comfortable than what they are. They're now hanging by a thread. So there's no denying that January has been a bit of a disaster. Isn't the only cause, but is a massive cause as to why Boro's season is not panning out the way that we hoped. But one bad window does not make a bad head of football. And all in all, every recruitment team will get things wrong. Every recruitment team will have hits and misses. And regardless of what January has been, for me, Kieran has been an immense asset to Middlesbrough Football Club. They mentioned some of the business that he's done at the club has been outstanding, although I do know and I do understand the frustration of Boro always selling their best players at times to which aren't ideal. Rogers last season, Lath this season. there have been plenty of brilliant pieces of business that Boro have done under Kieran Scott, which I think are allowing us to be far more competitive financially season on season, where we can spend money and not be in any real financial danger because we are bringing in players at a good price. We're building them up and selling them on for an outstanding profit. So we are a long way from the Boro that used to buy players past their prime on huge contracts who we'd let go on a free. We're in a much better place now, and I'll never understand people who talk down Kieran Scott and criticise him. Of course, he gets a few things wrong, don't we all, in life, in work, but overall, he has been a huge improvement to the structure of Middlesbrough Football Club, and I think the long-term benefits will continue to be seen, although there have been a few misses of late, and the timing of some of the sales have certainly not helped. So I stand behind the idea that this would be a giant loss. I do feel like he is one of the most important assets at this club, and if he was to leave, it would be another potential loss in what could be a really, really big summer for Boro. It's seemingly feeling bigger as the weeks pass by, because the more we look at Boro's squad, and I will be doing a video dedicated to this probably towards the end of the season, maybe after the season has concluded, depending on where Boro end up. But we are going to need a huge overhaul of players. We've got so many loanees that are going to return to their parent clubs. We've got so many players who are either out of contract, who are just probably not good enough to be at Boro, and it's leaving us short in a lot of areas. So we're going to have to bring in a lot of new players in the summer. So the squad overhaul and turnover is big enough as it is. And ideally, you want to have a head of football in place who's been at the club long enough, who can do that to the best of his ability. And I wouldn't want anyone else to try and solve that than Kieran Scott. I'd much rather have him there trying to plug them holes and bring them players in than someone brand new. Plus, there might also be a change of management and coaching staff if Boro don't make the playoffs, which was the absolute bare minimum target set by the club at the start of the season. So Boro might enter a summer where we're needing a new manager, new coaching team, a ton of new players, which seem like a big enough task as it is, but a head of football on top that makes me feel a little bit uneasy. I'm not going to lie. I'm all for change, and changing personnel on the pitch happens all the time, and a change in manager is something we've been through many, many times before. But to lose our head of football as well, who will play a huge part in bringing in that new manager, maybe getting that new manager to the club, I just feel like there could be a lot of moving parts and a lot of change at Boro at one single time that could be very, very disruptive, and it might just set us back a little bit in the short term, meaning the start to next season could be a little bit more bumpy than we would hope it to be. And I don't know if maybe the risk of losing Kieran Scott, plus the amount of change that we'll have in personnel, the club might just to keep some form of continuity behind the scenes, they might opt to keep Carrick if that's the case. But if they change manager as well, the whole club basically is getting, or will be getting, changed from top to bottom, barring a few small areas. So we might be entering a summer where there is a lot of change, a lot of transition, and that always, I think, brings turbulence and potential teething issues, which might make the start of next season a tougher one for Boro. I always believe in football, you need continuity, as much of it as possible anyway, because there's always going to be changes, of course, but on top of a lot of other changes that are necessary and could be if we don't make the playoffs, losing Kieran Scott would be huge as well. And I can kind of see it potentially happening. I wouldn't begrudge him for moving on. I wouldn't begrudge him if he took a Premier League position. As I always say, it's the same with when players come and go. We have to accept the club we are, and we're a championship club, and there are bigger fish, and they will come for our assets, whether they're players or not. And if Kieran Scott's offered a chance to go to Crystal Palace, I wouldn't begrudge him that opportunity. And it's not like Crystal Palace are a basket case in the Premier League either. They're a fairly well-run club and have been an established Premier League side for a hell of a long time now. They, as I said, as Craig Johns mentioned in the Gazette, they have a similar model to which Boro have utilised. So you'd imagine Kieran Scott would fit into that like a glove. So I think he would slot in to their way of running and working really, really easily, and it's a step up for him in the world of football as well. So watch this space on this one. Honestly, I know a lot of people say this regarding Carrick, but I believe this with Kieran Scott. Anyone wishing him out the door after one bad January, I think it's very careless to have that attitude. I would be very careful what we wish for in terms of Kieran Scott, because I think he's been one of the most crucial, important parts of this football club and has, for the most part, done an outstanding job and shouldn't be judged on last January alone, because he's done plenty of good for this football club and would be a huge loss if he were to move on. And as I say, that paired with a lot of change and a huge summer that looks like it's getting bigger and bigger as the weeks go by, we could be entering a really crucial period of change for the future of Middlesbrough Football Club and our aspirations, depending on where we are and what league we are in. So, let me know your thoughts on this news, and if you believe it would be a good decision to replace Kieran Scott or for him to move on, or do you sort of agree with me and believe that he is an asset we need to try and hold on to best we can? It's another thing to keep an eye on over the next few weeks, the next 8 games, and the short-term future of Boro feels massively important at this moment in time, and it could be a big, big summer. So let's hope and pray we enter that summer in the best position possible. But other than that, like the video if you've enjoyed it, subscribe for much more Boro and football content to come. There will be a big podcast coming over the weekend with Chris as we discuss Boro's current position in the season and look ahead to the running of games and whether we think Boro will make the playoffs or not. So subscribe for all that good stuff as well, and leave me a comment below. But until next time, do take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.